and I am joined by my friend Cindy Shurtleff, who is also the chapter coordinator for the Traveler Century Club Pacific Northwest chapter. And she is hiding out. I'm going to put her on full screen because she is hiding out in an incredible.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm at Lake Wenatchee. We have a home in Seattle, but decided it's much better to quarantine here. There's mountains, lakes, hiking, biking, and just a little more room to roam than there is in Seattle. I'm here at our home. There's my dog. We'll be fine unless a UPS guy comes, and then she's going to wake up and make a fuss. But here I am. My husband's behind me. I can hear him out on the tractor. He's I don't know what he's doing out there, but good to be here. I've lost Stefan. Stefan, you there?
Can you still hear me?
Yep, now I can.
Yep. I just wanted to show the full view. So
Yep.
I've been watching, but national park collectors, you've got three main national parks in Washington State: North Cascades, Mount Rainier, Olympic. Tell us how to visit them efficiently if we only have a day or two for each.
A day or two for each. Mount Rainier is easily done in a day trip from Seattle. You can do a loop, just go south, and you can do a loop around it, do a circle, as long as it's not winter when the road's closed. Going up to Sunrise, which is about 6,500 feet. You can drive right up there and do some little walks around. Olympics a little harder in a day, but you can do it. It's probably best done at least in 2 days because you can spend an overnight halfway around, either in Forks or Lake Quinault. But you just go west from Seattle. You're probably going to take a ferry at least once to get across the Puget Sound. Yeah, you can detour over to, what's that? Out past Forks. There's a First Nations or a Native community that's quite interesting. Trying to remember the name. So that can be done from a day. The North Cascades can also be. You could do a long day loop around from Seattle, going. Boy, that
I believe by long day, I've mapped it out. It's like 8 to 10 hours long day of driving, right?
Yeah, you'd be better off spending at least one night along the way, either in Winthrop or Chelan or Leavenworth, because there's a lot of different variety of country. You're going past glaciers and beautiful rugged mountains with snow, even in the summer, down to the Columbia River Valley, which is very dry and brown. You go through orchard country, fruit country, Wenatchee, apple capital of the world, and up through Leavenworth, back into the mountains, which has it's a Bavarian town, and so it's better if you could spend at least one day, but you could do it in a day if you wanted to.
Fantastic, and I know you're also originally from Southern California, so let's talk that iconic road trip that so many Americans want to take, so many visitors to the U.S. that might be their first trip, dream trip, is say from Vancouver, Seattle, all the way down to San Diego, the national parks, the sites. How do we put it together?
Yeah, I'd say starting about Seattle, you could go west to do the loop around Olympic National Park, and you could, if you wanted to come back and then loop past Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens on your way down I-5. At some point, you can cut over to the coast in Oregon and see the beautiful rock formations, the beaches that are pretty empty compared to the California beaches. The road is slow and windy, and at some point you'll get tired of it, and you come back over and go down Highway 5. Then you cut back over through the Redwoods. The Redwood National Park in Northern California is amazing. Go down the coast, unless you're.
I want to ask about the Redwoods. Actually, there's the national park, and then there's also state parks and different sites to visit. What are I guess ideally you'd see them all, but is the national park the one if you're going to visit one or another site?
I'd have to get my map out. I've been through there so many times, but as I remember, the state parks are just as good as the national park, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
There's just little state parks that have just as big of beautiful trees. Some of them with trees are even, some of them, they're not state parks. They have trees that are hollowed out and you can drive through still. I mean, you still
Mm.
could do that. So you just, no, there isn't a lot of difference between what is just Forest Service, what's a state park, what's a national park. It's all big redwoods, and you just are. I actually stayed in there's a motel in Crescent City called the Curly Redwood Motel, and they say the whole hotel is sheathed in wood from one redwood tree, one giant curly redwood tree, and it's just a
Mm.
very kitschy place from the 50s. Anyway, so just at some point you'll get tired driving down the highway or down the coast, so you cut back over. You could go see Mount Lassen. That's an easy walk up hike to do. I mean, not easy, but it's not technical.
Mhm.
And you can see Mount Shasta, and then you can go down through North Tahoe, the backside of Tahoe, down Highway 395, and cut into Yosemite from the back road over Tioga Pass,
And
which
I know Yosemite is very special to you personally, as
it
well as one
is.
of your favorites.
It is. My husband and I were married there 33 years ago on the meadow, in the meadow. It's Yosemite Valley, I think, is about the most beautiful place in the world. And um,
Mm.
so it's crowded. You have to kind of plan your trip there. You can't just you can drive through it certainly, but you're not going to get a place to stay
Mm.
without a little bit of planning, unfortunately. Although, well, I was going to say right now, well, no, now you can't get in, but 2 weeks ago you could have snuck in there and gotten a place. But so Yosemite, I think, and then just south of that is Sequoia and National Park, and what's the other one? I'm trying to remember. I just went there for the first time a couple years ago. Again, beautiful redwoods, and
Mm.
you're in the Sierra Nevadas, and the scenery is just very unique. And then you really want to be able, you really want to do the coast between Santa Cruz and Santa Barbara, because that
Mm.
passes you through San Simeon, Seahurst Castle, Morro Bay, Morro Rock, um, and then you come out at Santa Barbara, which is just a charming place to visit. There's nothing bad to say about Santa Barbara. And then keep going into LA as far as you want to go, all the way to San Diego.
How about I saw my friend Sean Coomer join, who's really big on roller coasters and amusement parks.
Oh,
So what's your pick in California traveling with kids? You've got like
yeah.
Knott's Berry Farm, you've got Disney, you've got Lego.
Yeah, I've been to them all because I kind of like them. What is the one just north of LA called? It's got the best roller coasters. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Is that Six Flags or is that a Six Flags?
There's been so much buying out of each other.
Mhm.
I'd have to look up the name. It's about an hour north of LA in Saugus, and it's
Hmm.
those are the best roller coasters. Knott's Berry Farm is kind of sweet. It's a little bit kind of old
Hmm.
homey. I wouldn't say it's the best roller coasters.
Hmm. Well,
Disneyland.
family travel experience.
I mean, Lego's great for kids under 10. You got to go, and Disneyland's great for all ages. Some of the roller coasters at California Adventure are really good, really really good. So I've been to Disneyland about 80 times because when I was a kid, we had three kids. My parents would say, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" And each of us would say, "I want to go to Disneyland." So we went 3 times a year for about 15 years, and then so I'm kind of a Disney fan. But anyway, um,
You just got back from Dry Tortugas, totally separate side of the country.
yes, I hadn't been to Key West, and so we took a seaplane out to the Dry Tortugas, which is a wonderful half-day trip. You can also do it as a full-day trip on a ferry, but we arrived in the afternoon just as the ferry was leaving, so we had the whole fort to just our seaplane, which is about five of us. And yeah, that's pretty remote and a wonderful experience. You can camp out there overnight if you plan ahead. You have to bring all your own water and gear, which we didn't want to haul
Mhm.
across country. That was just
Mhm.
because, yeah. But yeah, that was well worth doing. I've done many of the national parks, but I've got a few remote ones I've got a few on my list for sure. We all TCC, EPS people have lists.
Mhm.
So,
So what of the ones you visited that we haven't highlighted, are there real standouts that I'm thinking for myself, Big Bend in Texas, I went to and thought, oh, this is incredible. I wish I had planned more time for it. That
oh,
beyond the big headlines that everybody knows.
whoa, I haven't been there, so I'll chalk that one up. My one of my very favorites is Glacier National Park in Montana because
Mm,
I happen to love big mountains and glaciers and hiking, and I just think Glacier is outstanding. And you can take a train to it, which is really fun. I've done the train from Chicago to Seattle, and you can stop right there in Glacier. Um, Other
and
national.
Glacier, now Glacier is one. Is that a Four Seasons park? Is that something that if you're able to, you should try all Four Seasons or two seasons or?
Um, Um, I would say no. I'd say it's a summer park. I mean, I've been to Yellowstone in the winter a couple of times and cross country skied. That's a park you can do 4 seasons or really 2 seasons. They close it spring and fall for a short amount. But Glacier, you really have to drive over the going to the mountain sun up and over, and that's
Mhm.
only open a very short time in the summer. I think between late June and maybe late September. So you really have to do that in the summer. Although you
Yeah,
can go there and
I
ski in
did
the
go in
winter.
the winter, and yeah,
You'd
the
miss.
road is a short section. You can walk out on the lake because it's frozen, but other than that, you need snowshoes, and it's a
No,
long hike to the more conventional sites there.
no, no, it's a summer park, really. Summer
Hmm.
park. But Yellowstone, you can. I've gone in on snowmobiles and gone cross country skiing. Stayed like a week in the park, and you can do. Yeah, it's quite. You've got the. It's amazing. You have Old Faithful to yourself. You literally have it to yourself.
Well, that's key, and that's what I've focused on is visiting some of these places, just like my international travels, of visiting them when kids are very much in school, when the retirees and I think a lot of the national parks in the U.S. are busy based on how people, the RV travelers, the retirees, how they move around the country, and so picking when it is a bit off season. I've heard even Crater Lake in Oregon that a lot closes by the end of September into October, but it is possible year round or more or less year round. And you can, if you go say late October, you'll have it almost to yourself.
And we went mid-June one time and had it. It was pretty empty. We walked right up to the national park lodge there. Couldn't get a reservation, but when I walked up and said, "Do you have space?" They said yes. So I've had good experience in the national parks. You walk up about 3 o'clock um, when I don't know with cancellations somehow things open up always at 3 o'clock and gotten
Hmm.
lodging. So because
Yeah, that lodging you mentioned, Big Bend, the big regret I had there was it the only lodging that's with. I mean, the park is so remote that other than the official lodge and the camp, anything outside is a couple hour drive to get to the nearest towns. And that lodge is so beautifully situated that I had wished it was available. It was booked full, and I had to drive out. But that one for sure, I
yeah.
thought, oh goodness, and it's comfortable. I always imagined before I started visiting these that you're just sleeping on the floor. You need tents and all this equipment, but these lodges are generally a comfortable hotel accommodation plus the camping options.
Yeah, they're nice. I kind of forgot all the Utah parks. You could spend
Mm.
a lot of time in southern Utah, Arches, Canyonland, Zion, Bryce. I've been there a number of times and in lots of different experiences, whether on a camping bike trip or um, just all sorts of. It's just they're so diverse. They're really different. Each of them is really different, and you can plan a wonderful week long, 2 week long driving trip. Um, and there's a pretty long season to them. I'd say, sort of April, May through October. So
Mm.
that's pretty good. It's about
There's a few in Colorado that I remember looking. I think what was it, Mesa Verde, and some that really it's very limited in winter. But others that was looking at, you could still do a lot even in winter.
yeah, yeah. And I went to actually Rocky Mountain for the first time just a few months ago.
Mm.
And well, that I went. It was summer, but it was September. But that was a beautiful. I mean, all the national parks have something wonderful to offer. Really can't go wrong with them.
Mm. Now let's talk about another. another passion that I think is shared with many of the EPS members is scuba diving. And you started scuba diving as an adult, and as I understand, fell in love with it. And you've been to some of the greatest places in the world.
I have. We were in Indonesia for a 40th birthday of mine, and the diving, Moyo Pulau,
Mhm.
an Amanwana resort, and the diving is outstanding there. And I got up the nerve to try it because I'm claustrophobic and
Mhm.
a lot of things. And it was a fantastic experience. So I came home from that and got certified in Seattle in the coldest water in the world. It was terrible,
Mm.
but I've never dove again in cold water. I can't, I've just been very lucky. Thailand and the Philippines, off Sipidon, off Borneo, the Cayman Islands, the
Mm.
Virgin Islands, you name it. I've searched, I've searched out and been very fortunate to dive in some of the best places. So,
I'm not a diver. I'm a paddler, a scuba diver. As I understand, you need to allow a certain time, I guess, after you're diving before you can hop on the flights. And so I'm curious how you think about planning diving trips, and put it together, perhaps with a bit of country collecting
yeah,
and
um, yeah, that's tricky. You have to wait 24 hours before flying after diving. So it yeah, I tend to go to a place for, like 5 days of diving or something. And you try, it's good if there's something to see other than diving because you have to wait before you can fly out of there. Um, yeah, I don't know. Once you become a diver, you'll realize it's just like it's collecting different kinds of experiences because there's all sorts of different diving. There's the corals and the pelagics and the tropical fish, and you want to see it all, or wrecks. You kind of so you go have different experiences in different places, and you plan trips around that. So
mm,
typically, I'll have a trip, and we'll dive for a piece of it, and then we'll be touring and doing different things. And the only tricky thing is then you're dragging some equipment with you. I don't take tanks. I don't take BCDs. I don't even own that stuff, but I do like mass
what's the BCD?
buoyancy, your buoyancy device. It's your vest, and so people,
Okay.
it's just a bunch of gear. So
I think people they carry is it the regulator that it's called? That's the one
yeah,
if they're going to carry
they
something.
might carry their computer with all the hoses, but I don't even own that stuff because you have to
Mm.
use it often enough to keep it up and have it, to make sure you can trust it. And I'd rather actually, I was just thinking of another dive trip I did. It was in Tahiti on Rangaroa. There's a pass that you can dive through. I was just thinking of good equipment, but it's a pass that you dive with the current. And we were
Mm.
diving through this pass, and the sharks were and the fish were watching us go by them at about 15 knots. It was just
Mm.
an amazing dive. No, but it just made me think about the equipment on some of these remote places. There's lots of equipment, and you might wish you had your own, but you don't. So I usually just travel with a mask and snorkel, and then my fins, and then I can use them for snorkeling. But it means you're always dragging a big bag with you. You're definitely not going to get
Mm.
through on just carrying on. You're checking bags, and
I guess it's not as bad as the surfers, right?
no. I have flown windsurfers to Hawaii before, and that was like crazy with masks.
Oh wow.
That was a long time ago. Never do that again. But
Now Matt Mikas, he just added in the comments, he's wondering what's the best value for diving in your opinion?
um, I haven't dove in Honduras, but I know that Roatan is really reasonable. I see the packages there, and
Mm.
and I think it's pretty good diving in the Caribbean. Really good diving.
Mm.
It's pretty expensive in Hawaii. Thailand's not too bad for value. I'm trying to think. The Philippines are tough just because it's expensive to get there. The islands that you want to do it on are it's it's cheap on the land, but just getting there is not cheap. So, oh, Taputa Pass in Rangaroa. That was it. Somebody mentioned Taputa Pass. That's the dive I did in Rangaroa.
Mm.
Diving. There's
Are prices for the actual dives, do they vary a lot, or is it the logistics around them that are the big variable?
I'd say the actual, if you're just going for a day dive, it's usually 50 to 100-ish dollars for
Mhm.
usually two tanks, two dives, and like a half day um, with a dive master, and that usually includes the rental of the equipment. So, wetsuit and all your gear. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's Mecca. No, I did dive in Mexico and out of Cozumel, and that was pretty cheap. So that would be good value diving. Um,
Yeah, I felt guilty that I'm not a diver. I've got an equalization issue that I'd like to overcome, but I've been to some incredible places where people have spent many thousands to go diving, and I'm just paddling around, and I still regret Ponape in Micronesia, which is an
yeah,
incredible spot.
I want.
But I, mhm,
Yeah, I
go
want to
ahead.
go to Yap, and there's some places in
I would,
Micronesia I want to go. My husband has the same problem with his ears clearing. So
yeah,
they don't clear. He will struggle for a week after he dives. They crackle and
mm,
crinkle. And
mm.
so we kind of factor that in and try not to do a lot of flying right after he's dove. And, um, you just weigh the pros and cons. Is it worth it or not? Yeah. So,
Yeah, in Ponape, I hadn't had LASIK at that point. I'm paddling around, and I know the manta rays are way down there. I can see the shadows, and that's about all I could see snorkeling. So
yeah. Yeah, I didn't like getting tossed around on the surface of the water when I was snorkeling. I mean, it can be really rough on the surface, but once you go down just 3 feet, it's so
hmm,
calm and so quiet, and that's why I started diving because it was just much easier to tell you the truth once I overcame the claustrophobia, and kind of have to go in your head and breathe deep and do little relaxation stuff to kind of
hmm.
deal with what it's like. But once you're down there, it is amazing. So I was afraid of doing a night dive because that's kind of, that's, I don't know, that
Oh,
just
okay.
freaked me out. But when we were in the Philippines last time, I did a night dive and it was spectacular. And I want to
Mm,
do more of them. You just see different things and you see them in a different way with
mm.
your flashlight illuminating things. So I think that was a big step for me to get to the point where I could do a night dive. 'Cause
And I think you've seen a number of sharks. For people that are interested in different sharks, which one has jumped out as shark
well,
infested? Do you use the
No, I
term?
mean, I've seen black tips and white tips and big ones. There were big ones in it, big sharks in Indonesia, but they pretty much leave you alone. The one I'd like to see is a hammerhead. We tried to see them in Taputa Pass, but we didn't see them because they hang out pretty low and
Mhm.
they're really in certain places. They're just in remote places like in the Galapagos or the Cocos Islands um, Costa Rica. So we just haven't seen them, and I'm not sure I'm going to see them at this point because to go see them is, it's a pretty big investment of time um,
I see.
because they're remote. But
Are
I
they
just think
okay?
hammerheads are most amazing things. I mean, look at those guys. They're weird. They're otherworldly.
Yeah, that would be incredible. I've seen small sharks. I mean, I feel like that experience in Belize that, in hindsight, it seems utterly ridiculous. I know the nurse sharks aren't necessarily dangerous, but the idea that they just have tourists jump in the water and then they throw chunks of meat in your and trying to get them riled up, it's got to be bad for the animals and a bad thing. But I remember them doing that. Not sharks, but Grand Cayman. They have that. It's almost ridiculous how they go in those lagoons and try to get the stingrays to come.
Oh yeah,
And
dove with those, and yeah, they're
yeah,
eating out of your hands,
and
which
one gave me this horrible hickey looking thing that I got back from the trip, and my wife said, "What did you get into?" And I said it was a jealous stingray.
a little hickey.
Ah. Oh, I see one comment from Gina Morelli Mitchell. She says Bahamas has seasonal hammerheads.
That is good to know. I'm going to write that one down because it's relatively close. Um,
I'm trying to think of, I haven't kept up on the different recovery of Bahamas since their storms, and of course now the whole industry is getting hit. But there's Bahamas is not just one place; it's a few different islands, and I think two major airports that you can fly into. And yeah, the I've been on the water slides at Atlantis. That's the only the only thing that I can contribute on Bahamas because they have that big casino with the water park and all that. And if you book the very cheap, I think it's a choice privilege. I think it's a Comfort Inn. If you book the very cheap Comfort Inn across the street, you also get Atlantis privileges for the water park and that. And so you're just staying at this. It's just like a typical 2.5 star style motel, but you can walk across and enjoy all the Atlantis things. And um, there's a deal with points travelers and casino status where you get, I think, a supposed free stay at Atlantis, and everybody I know that's done it, they seem to have all these complaints of how the free stay became not free or became aggravating. So I think it's easier just to turn up at the budget hotel across and go for a day of water sliding if you want.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty weak Bahamas
Yeah.
experience, I'm
No,
sure.
we chartered a bareboat in the Bahamas because we're sailors and we sail all around there for.
What's a bareboat? Sorry.
A bareboat is a boat you rent without, and you skipper it yourself. So there's no crew.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay.
so we had a catamaran and we went all through the Bahamas. They're very shallow. We actually beached it one time by accident, but you just push it off. And it was just a wonderful way to get to, well, we did that in Tonga too, because then you get to meet local people at their own level, but in more remote places because you
Mhm.
sail in. There's no other way to
Mm,
get to some of these islands, so you sail
mhm.
to them. But that's
And
that's yeah. I would actually love to. I'd love to sail all the way down the Caribbean at some point, but I don't know. I don't know if that'll happen because I don't know anyone who wants to do a one-way rental all the way.
yeah, I was just trying to think how would I even look for it? I guess if you're in the market for a bareboat, you already know enough about boating that you would know where to look and
That could be a
get
whole.
yourself.
It could be a whole nother conversation, but there's lots of ways to do it with companies that will supply a skipper, and you can tell them where you want to go, and then the skipper will take you where you want to go, and you don't have to worry about. There's a lot of work that goes into sailing your own boat in foreign
Oh yeah,
countries.
yeah. I wouldn't. It's not something like
It's
I
a
was nervous for showing up time with a rental car with a manual transmission. I'm not even gonna
it's it's
begin to.
it's a nice vacation, nice way to travel with friends and just be together and be remote. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well,
Somebody in the notes hasn't mentioned Joshua Tree as a national park
mhm,
that's underrated,
mhm.
and I can absolutely agree to that. I was there last year and the year before. It's a beautiful, not a large national park. You can easily do it from Los Angeles and or you can spend more time, but just spend a couple hours there hiking around, and it's just otherworldly, those Joshua Trees. So that's another good one that's easy to get to because it's near a big metropolitan area.
Yeah, and I came in. I think I visited last year. It must have been around. I think it was early March actually, and I came in from Arizona, so entered on the southern side, southeast, and
Southeast.
right, just turning off the highway were the most incredible flowers that were in bloom. And I figured, oh, I'm not even really in the park yet, so there's going to be a lot more of these. And then I kept driving and driving and got to the visitor center and say, "Oh, where do I see more of those flowers?" And they said, "You got to go back. That's the spot." So if you come in from Arizona, you see those flowers, take advantage of them
Was that was
right
that in
there.
March?
Don't go away the-
Was that in
Hmm?
March? Was it in March?
I think it was early March
Yeah,
last
I
year.
think I was there too then, and it was a super bloom. Last year was a super bloom of whatever they were.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
I
now,
saw
and
them
I
too.
didn't drive back. Now I really regret it that I got no pictures of it. I didn't stop and linger and smell the roses, so to speak. So, uh, but hopefully a future one. And I did enjoy that. It's it is such a distinct landscape that, and even Pinnacles I visited last year just as a side trip from Monterey. It's not necessarily one to lodge in memory as the most special, but it was a weekday, and I had the place to myself for 2 hours until the next car or two came in.
Yeah.
So there's tremendous opportunity. Well, Cindy, I know you've got to run to your next meeting. I appreciate you joining in. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Show us your view one more time so we can
Okay.
see what we're using. I'll put you on full screen. Hold on.
Okay. This is Lake Wenatchee. It's over Highway 2, Stevens Pass. It's a 5-mile long glacier carved lake. There's snow on the mountains over there. It snowed on me this morning actually while out for a hike. We're at about 2,000 feet, and we are 2 hours east of Seattle and about 3.5 hours west of Spokane in this middle of the state. Well, kind of western middle of the state. So anyway, that's my quarantine uh, existence, which let me tell you, I feel pretty fortunate to be here. Really fortunate. Thank you. I hope all of you stay safe, and we can all plan some trips down the road.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Good day, Cindy. And I'll take a couple more questions she has to drop. But if anybody has further questions in the group, absolutely welcome to add. I've been trying to follow the travel news. Loyalty programs are an interest, and it's interesting how many have extended status doing proactive marketing things, and others are sitting and watching. I've been making a bit of a study. I'm keeping a folder of all the different letters. We've all been getting swamped with these emails of everything that's coming in. Every possible company is saying, sending out their message, even ones online only places that don't have stores or anything. And I've been trying to categorize which ones I think are really done well. I'm registered with an account with Shangri-La Hotels, although I don't think I actually stayed in one. There was maybe one time, but there was a promo to get free points that you could use for a meal a year or two ago. So I signed up for that, and I thought that CEO letter, it was from the CEO of the company, not just the loyalty program, and it was very pragmatic. It seemed to have the right priorities, and it sounds like that's a company that's been around for a long time, as far as I know, doing things well, and um, uh, the message reflected that, and I like the clear communication. I like the upfront and honest, and not making it seem like the sense of like some of the U.S. airlines, like you can tell that the statements are only good for the second they were typed, and then the employees are our most important people until they're gone. So it's clearly tough times for everyone. I've been looking at what opportunities to dream and book things. I've been proactively booking Delta awards for trips, business trips, and leisure that I've been hoping to have later this year that I can freely cancel with my status, as well as I think even somebody without status, many of these trips they'd be able to cancel. So that's the travel news I've been following. We are going to close the inbox for today. We've got a special guest tomorrow that will be phoning in very early in her morning on the weekend. Tokyo. Join us tomorrow. Thank you.